Hello, students, and welcome to part 2 of our module on sports public relations. In this video, in the last video, we talked about an introduction to sports public relations, the aims and purposes, and the tension that the NCAA Stay in Bounds article highlighted. This video, we're going to delve into crisis communication in sports, and then part 3 will delve into corporate social responsibility. So we're going to focus on crisis communication in this module quite a bit. So Chapter 7, the supplemental reading, and the Ryan Lochte case study all discuss crisis communication as well as image repair strategies. A few of the articles that I added to the reading response journal list deal with this topic directly. Further, later on this month, our case study is going to explore crisis communication in sports. You will get a chance to decide on what that case is. So at the end of this video, I have a survey that I would like all of you to respond to and see what case it is you would like to choose. So I'm not choosing for you. So first, something that came up in the first video was when I was talking about the 7 different areas that PR kind of deals with, and 2 of them are issue management and crisis management. So I want to kind of talk about the difference here. And I mentioned it briefly, but issue management has more to do with things that are ongoing, and the organization can anticipate issues. So something regarding, labor unions or just workplace or interpersonal issues that an organization can anticipate and plan for based on what's going on in the organization. So issues management is an anticipatory strategic management process that helps organizations detect and respond appropriately to emerging trends or changes in the larger socio-political environment. These issues can crystallize into a crisis or like a particular issue or a situation that would evoke concern from publics and stakeholders. Organizations are engaging in issues management if decision makers are actively looking for, anticipating, and responding to shifting stakeholder expectations and perceptions likely to have important consequences for the organization. So last example here, McDonald's anticipatory move from plastic to paper packaging all the way back in 1990. So organizations responding to emerging trends. Crisis management, on the other hand, has more to do with something jarring or upsetting that happens all of a sudden. Now, it can emerge out of a larger pattern, which we will discuss, but a crisis is really that kind of in the moment, shocking thing that happens. And we're gonna be focusing on crises. A crisis is defined as an untimely but predictable event that has actual or potential consequences for stakeholders' interests as well as the reputation of the organization suffering the crisis. So that's a big distinction here in terms of the reputation, the image, the credibility. Those things are at stake in a crisis. So an interesting case here being what is known as the concussion crisis. Do you think that this is an issue or a crisis? Some might say that based on just patterns of violence and the way some sports are just with contact, that it would be an issue kind of emerging out of that culture. But there would be others that would claim that it is a crisis, that it is something that is impacting the reputation of the NFL or of whatever organization it is. So the line can be blurry between issue and crisis, but the key being that a reputation, an image, credibility are at stake. And that's why we are looking at some case studies like the Ryan Lochte case study from this module. Often when we hear the word crisis in the sports context, we're thinking of a scandal. So that would be a synonym here. On the notes page in Canvas, I have a link to an article which has a list of major scandals of the last few decades. And there are just so many that extend even farther back. But here are just some examples that you're probably familiar with, right? So Lance Armstrong, doping. This is a big issue that has turned into scandals across a variety of sports. UNC academic fraud scandal of the early 2010s, the paper classes that athletes were enrolled in that were not real classes. We've got the Penn State Jerry Sandusky scandal in 2011, the Duke lacrosse scandal, Patriots Deflategate, as well as recently the Houston Astros sign stealing scandal, and then also Hope Solo. I want to make it clear that, women are not exempt from doing bad things. So we have the Hope Solo domestic abuse scandal. So based on this definition, are these scandals predictable as the reading suggests? So are all of these things, doping, cheating, sexual abuse, are those things predictable? Are they issues or are they crises? Well, the short answer is they can be both. And again, that distinguishing feature being something that causes public outrage that is impacting the credibility, the image of an organization. Whereas a more benign issue like labor relations or interpersonal conflict does not really affect the public credibility. I found this graphic that I think is really interesting, and you can see that it's from 2012, so it's already, 8 years old, but periodic table of NCAA scandals. So obviously scandals in the sports world range from the professional, even the high school level through college and so on. And these are just NCAA scandals, and you can see how they are characterizing different groups of scandals. So there's just a ton here just up until 2012. So the next thing we are going to talk about are the crisis communication strategies, otherwise known as image repair strategies, reputation management. There are dozens of crisis communication strategies and responses, and Chapter 7 gives a whole list of them. I'm going to show you a list on the next slide, but just kind of highlighting 3 here that are very common in a time of crisis or a scandal. First one being denial, right? So just denying that any wrongdoing has occurred, claiming that you didn't know about it, that, we didn't know it was happening, so we're innocent. Then we've also got this pointing fingers image is scapegoating, right? So placing the blame or shifting the blame onto someone else, that is something that actually occurred a lot in the Penn State Sandusky scandal discourse. It was actually, Sandusky who committed the crimes, but a lot of the finger pointing went to Paterno, and rightfully so, because he did not do enough in his role to kind of escalate the situation. But what the effect of that is that people forgot that it was actually Jerry Sandusky who was assaulting the young boys, and a lot of people thought that it was Joe Paterno. So again, Paterno had some fault in the matter, but a lot of people did not even remember Jerry Sandusky's name, and that's kind of a result of that scapegoating. And then the third one here on the left, corrective action. So promising change. And we see this a lot in crisis discourse. And the reason I'm kind of pulling these 3 out is because we're going to see those showing up a lot in our case study, right? What are the promises being made to create change? And what is, how are they changing to make things better or to prevent something from happening in the future? a lot of these crisis communication strategies come from a much larger theory that is not about sports, right? This is just crisis communication in a corporate setting. So these examples on here like Tylenol, Exxon, AT&T, right? We've got this corporate setting. We've got a crisis that usually has to do with a flawed product or some sort of disaster, right, that oil spill that happened. And so you can see how these strategies are being used in those different examples. And so we're going to be looking at how these strategies play out in the sports context. Most studies that examine the mortification strategy, so you can see here at the bottom, which is apology, show that the strategy is largely successful. In rare cases, it is not successful, and that usually has something to do with the timeliness of the response or the audience's perception of honesty and sincerity. So I know that I saw William looked at the LeBron James, The Decision article, and was pointing out that mortification seems like an effective strategy, and the research would support that claim. So awesome job, William. So just to kind of wrap this up, I do want to hear from you in terms of what sports crisis or scandal you would like the focus of our case study to be. You can refer to the list I have in Canvas. So you don't have to answer this at the moment that you're seeing this. You can come back to it and type in your answer that you think you would like to explore. So this is a word cloud, so it is going to break the words up. So if you want to just type in one word, you can, but I mean, I can also figure it out if you type in multiple words. So if I put in 2 examples here. I keyed these in: UNC cheating and Astros sign stealing. So if you would like to explore one of those, type it in again, and it will just make that word bigger in the word cloud, and I can kind of see where the interest is. And if we need to, we can vote, but put in something that you would like the focus to be, and we will go from there. So stay tuned for part 3 on corporate social responsibility.